Okay, so let's get started with the presentation here tonight. All right, we're picking on you, Mike. So. All right, the presentation tonight is going to start on a little bit of a strange note. We're going to start with a dead horse. Now, if you ever find yourself riding a dead horse, the good advice is to just to dismount, to get off that dead horse. But in the world of business, dead horses are never straightforward. And so we've come up with the top 10 strategies for dealing with the dead horse. Number 10 is to buy a stronger whip. Number 9 is to appoint a committee to study the horse. Number 8 is to arrange a visit to other sites to see how they ride dead horses. Provide additional funding to increase the horse's speed. Number 6, purchase a product to make the dead horse run faster. Number 5, form a quality circle to find other uses for dead horses. Hire a consultant, see if they can ride the dead horse. Harness several dead horses together for increased speed. And clearly, you should promote the dead horse to a supervisory position. So the number one strategy for dealing with a dead horse is click here to pay 25 cents to hear the punchline of this joke. Eight years ago, the DaVinci Institute produced an event called the Future of Money Summit. The Future of Money Summit was all about where the money world was going. And we talked about this concept here. Are people in the future going to be paying money to hear punchlines of jokes? At that time, we thought, well, maybe. Now, probably not. So a lot of the thinking over the years has changed about micropayments and how they're going to be used. So what are micropayments? They were originally envisioned as payments that were less than $1, and there's lots of hype about them. Today, there's all these different definitions for what micropayments really are. PC Magazine says it's less than 75 cents and as low as a fraction of a cent. PayPal now uses the definition of it's under $12. And Visa has an even higher bar. It's under $20, which if it's under $20, then that involves most of the purchases, it would seem like. So 2011, according to Forrester Research, is finally a year when the near-field communication technology will reach the hands of millions of people. And this is a technology that's going to change a lot of things. So what is near-field communications? The mobile wallets are things that are just devices. You can just use your cell phone and hold it within close proximity of a device, and you can make payments. You don't have to be right there. You can use it to buy items out of vending machines. You can use it as to swipe on the subway so that you can get on board the subway. And while you're walking through grocery stores and the supermarkets, you can use it to scan and get coupons and other reminders. It'd be real handy stuff. People are going to invent a lot of ways of using this near-field communication. So what are the micropayment markets? This I found a little bit confusing because I see there's a lot more markets than what most people are talking about. The gaming world is clearly a market, virtual worlds, advertising, subscriptions, donations. There's a lot of people playing in the donation game. Mobile apps, incentives, and digital content like books, movies, music. Now there's a big difference between inbound payments and outbound payments. Seems like when you're getting customers to buy things for micropayments, for the most part, they don't want to be bothered with a payment that's less than $1. Somewhere there's a barrier in the minds of people. Outbound payments, like Google AdSense, paying people to incentivize them to use the ads, those are far less than $1. Most of them are a few cents here and there. So this has all been changing radically with the world of apps. The world of apps has all started just in 2008. Well, there was apps before then, but the mobile app world has just taken off like a rocket. March of 2008 is when Apple released the Software Developers Kit, and it was June of that year when they announced the first 500 apps. Today there's 372,000 iPhone apps. There's over 250,000 Android apps. Sometime this year, the number of apps for mobile devices will exceed 1 million. And then it won't be too much longer after that when the number of apps exceed the number of books that are available for purchase. This is an information device, and I find this interesting to compare books with apps because they're unique and different, but they're similar in some ways. Facebook has over 75,000 apps, over 200,000 publishers. See, every major credit card company and tech company already has a micropayment strategy in place, and they're working these strategies. So I'm just going to go through some of the major players here real quickly, and then I'm going to talk about 3 different scenarios, different concepts in the micropayments world. Apple has been working in the micropayments world for a long time. They've been selling 99-cent music. They sell movies, books, audiobooks. They have apps, online courses, and iTunes U. Now they're moving into the whole in-app payment system. So inside of the app that you download, you'll have the option of making payments or possibly receiving payments. And so they're having some trouble with the criteria, and so they've had to lay down the law with several of the developers. Google is going down this path as well. Google has been playing around with AdWords and AdSense for a number of years, and these are basically micropayments. Their new OnePass micropayment system is for publishers. The Social Gold is an in-app social payment technology they're going to put in all the Android devices. ZetaWire is a new acquisition by Google. Includes mobile banking, advertising, identity management, credit cards, mobile coupons, transaction processing. Amazon's got their flexible payment service. Amazon's been playing around in the micropayment world for quite some time here. And Facebook. Facebook has their Facebook credits. They've partnered with PayPal, and they're doing some real interesting things there. The original investor in Facebook was Peter Thiel, and he was one of the founders of PayPal. So this makes good sense that they would actually start partnering up with PayPal. And then our ability to accept payments through our mobile devices. This is a marketplace that's heating up quite a bit. This is just 3 of the players, Verifone, Intuit, and Square. Square was developed by Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter. It's a simple device, little square device you put on the back of your iPhone, and you can start accepting payments. And they show up in your PayPal account. It's my favorite physicist, Max Planck, likes to say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. All right, I'm going to go through 3 different micropayment concepts here. First would be fractal transactions, and universal commerce, and then social currencies. Now, once I'm finished here, then we'll bring our panelists up who know much more about this whole industry than I do, and they're going to hold my feet to the fire and tell me how far off base I was, which is fine. So fractal transactions. Imagine yourself sitting in front of a television 20 years in the future. 20 years in the future, you're watching this real intense pizza commercial. It's on there and you start drooling, and all of a sudden you finally just nod your head and say yes. And that's all it takes. And 30 seconds later, a flying pizza delivery drone docks with your house and delivers pizza to your house. Not only does it deliver the pizza, it also delivers a 6-pack of beer because it knows what you want.
So 31 seconds is yours free, right?
Yeah, it's 30 seconds or it's free. So the marketers have always wanted to match up the marketing moment with the buying moment. They wanted to reduce that amount of time in between. Because when they get somebody excited about a product, they want them to say yes right then and there. They want you to be able to fulfill that purchase right then and there. The speed definitely sells. So in the world of the way transactions are handled today, when somebody purchases something, the money flows to the retailer, and then the retailer distributes that money off to a number of different people. Now, I wrote up an article a couple years ago for Futurist magazine. I talked about this idea of taking that person out of the middle, and there's companies that are doing this now, that we eliminate the person in the middle and we create some algorithms that will automatically distribute the money. So as an example, on a transaction that you make with Amazon, you're buying a book, some of the money would automatically flow to the author, some of it would flow to the publisher, some of it would flow to the Amazon itself, and FedEx is the delivery company. So it would automatically, these payments would get split and get sent off to each of these people. Now if you think about how products are designed and manufactured right now, all of this has to be paid up front, and that puts a heavy burden on that entrepreneur to get that product off the ground. If it could be set up so that it was a joint partnership with all of these people along the way, then your upfront costs get tremendously reduced. And so everybody gets incentivized along with every purchase. So in an e-commerce example, it could be split up. It could actually go to 30 or 40 different people. Everybody gets a slice of the pie. Part of it goes to the manufacturer, part of it goes to the distribution center, call center, shipping company, the website operator. And so there could be a number of different people along the way that get incentivized with this. So that's the concept of fractal transactions. I will go on to this crazy idea of universal commerce. Universal commerce was an idea that was developed by Visa. Their chief technology officer, Scott Rogers, was working on this for a few years, and then apparently he's abandoned it or it morphed into something else, but Visa and Philips were the primary drivers behind it. But if you think about using a typical blow dryer for your hair, and you just use it to dry your hair just like any other normal blow dryer, but it has a little button on the side of it. You see that little purple button I made up here there? That's a universal commerce button. The idea behind universal commerce is to make every device a payment device. And so you hit that button, and all of a sudden it blows highlighter into your hair, but it charges you 62 cents every time you use it. So it could work with nail polisher. You polish your nails, but it has a universal commerce button on the side of it. So every time you hit that button, it dispenses nail polish, but it charges you 48 cents every time you use it for that. It can work on other types of devices, whether it's a camera. Every time you click the shutter, it charges you 0.4 cents or 0.004 cents whatever the appropriate amount is, every time you click the shutter. Or you could use it on a printer, and the printer has a universal commerce button on it. You just hit that button, or every time a page goes through and prints, it charges you just a fraction of a cent. So the idea behind this is that you could actually walk into a store and everything in the store is free. And you just take it home. And when you take it home, once you use it, then you get charged for it. So you can have your pantry full of stuff, and excuse me, as soon as you use it, then you get charged for it. So you just have cans of Coke sitting around. Well, you can turn those into money. So if you think about different strategies for how this would work, is today people are making digital cameras to try to be under the $200 price point. Well, with this type of business model, you could actually make much more than $200 on this over the course of time. And so if you have a camera that's used for the next 10 years, you might get $1,500 off of it, $2,000 off of it. So you'd want to design something that's much more durable, something that would last a lot longer. Now, I fully acknowledge that there's all kinds of problems with this type of thinking, because if people don't use it, then you don't get any money at all. So maybe there has to be some minimum usage requirement or something like that. But it's an interesting way of thinking about it, because it's different than the way we normally think about the business world today. Potentially much greater profits. So just any digital camera then could have that universal commerce button on it. All right, before I get into the last one, we'll talk about how we think about money a little bit. See, money that's based on raw, rare commodities like gold and silver only holds its value until commodities are no longer rare. Similarly, money that's based on confidence and trust holds its value until the faith in the system begins to dissipate. That's what's known as fiat money. But in essence, all money is fiat money. It's all based on trust and confidence. And when that goes away, then it's difficult to replace it. In the US, we have layers of trust built in. We have the cities accept the national currency. The states accept it, the counties accept it, and so there's layers of trust that's built into it. So today, money is a little more than information, digital nuggets that have been assigned value buried deep inside the information systems that we have. See, currency has been the traditional system for transferring value. In the future, our social networks will enable a lot of different ways for transferring value. Javelin Strategies says that about 20% of our transactions today take place over the so-called alternative payment systems. Some of the ones that are coming into play right now are kind of interesting and novel. TwitPay is one that allows you to send payments over Twitter. Zong is one that lets consumers use their phone numbers to make payments and get charged to their phone bill. GetGiving enables charities to accept small donations without the exorbitant credit card fees. Hub culture is an interesting one that allows you to, rather than to go to the money exchangers to go into another country, you transfer your money into some gaming currency, and then once you get over there, then you transfer it out into that country's currency. You eliminate a lot of the fees. TinyPass is one of the newer ones that's out. It has a lot of interesting features. It has the split pay, like the fractal transactions I was talking about. They have systems for working with auctions, contributions, Has auto expire features, multi-pricing, lots of functionality to it. It's still in its beta stage, but this is what I think you'll hear a lot more about in the near future. And PayPal's doing a lot of interesting stuff too. They opened their platform, and 2 months after they opened their platform, 15,000 developers had downloaded PayPal to create some new payment services. So we're seeing a real increase in alternative currencies. They're showing up everywhere. So if you look at what a dollar is worth in some of these other currencies, a dollar is worth 10 Facebook credits, 125 to 170 WoW credits, World of Warcraft credits, 80 Microsoft points, 6 Q coins, 250 Linden dollars, 1.5 million Star Wars Galaxy credits, 6 Hobble coins, and the list goes on and on and on. There's tons of these currencies out there. Last year for my birthday, my son actually bought me a $10 gift card for Farmville. Turns out you can buy a hell of a lot of chickens for $10. I haven't used it at all, but I was just amazed to see that you could get gift cards for Farmville. So all of these are coming into play. They're coming out of the woodwork. So every person is a combination of financial value and social value. So we look at how economies work. If you only have one person in the world, you have no economy. If you have two people in the world, you have a very limited economy between those two people. If you have 100 people in the world, is it 50 times what the two people are? It's actually much more than that because of all the lines of credit, all the ways of trading back and forth. When we have people create the economy, and without people, you don't have an economy. So we are actually going into declining populations in a lot of countries, and that's messing up a lot of the way we normally think about how the economy should function. But when you look at a person and you decide, what is this person worth? Typically, what is the value of this person? We think in terms of financial characteristics. What are their bank balances? What kind of car do they drive? What's in their 401k? What kind of house do they live in? These are things that we look at as through our financial lens. There's also these social values, which are a tremendously important part of every individual. Things like personal knowledge, their networks, their relationships, their reputation, the talent. All of these things tie in. These are the social side of that person. Their compassion, their accomplishments. So in the future, we currently don't have any currencies that take into account these social values. In the future, we will. We haven't been able to assign metrics to any of these social attributes that people have. We're getting there. We're getting there. So social currencies in the future will be designed around assigning points to promote good behavior. And so how will social currencies work? Well, if you select a healthy meal for lunch, you get 2,000 points. You eat too much and blow your diet, you lose 3,500 points. You tell your friends about a new line of clothing, you get 4,500 points. You go shopping and exceed your credit limit, minus 8,000 points. You meet a friend, buy coffee at Starbucks, you get 500 points. You get into an argument, you lose 3,000 points. Win a game of Star Wars, 1,900 points, you start yelling at your opponent, minus 4,500 points. Select a vitamin-rich diet, 2,500 points. Eat too much fried food, you lose 5,000 points. An intimate romantic evening with a robot, you lose 500,000 points. There's just no excuse for that one. So points in the future will be redeemable for goods and services through partner companies. How this all comes about remains to be seen. These are just some of the ideas that are being floated around. And in the future, if the government gets involved in these things, they're trying to promote good behavior. If you get enough points, maybe you can use it to pay off your taxes. Maybe you can use it for other things, deductions. But these are just some of the ideas of where micropayments are going to go. So as I mentioned up front, I was just going to give a short, brief intro to this whole topic, and the gentlemen that follow me are the true experts on it. So we're going to take a short 5-minute break here. We're going to reset the stage here, and we're going to dive into this topic head on. Thank you.
I'm going to read just a little bit. If anyone has? Brief, a little bit comment about the bios for all the folks up here. So we'll just give you a little taste. Arthur Brock, and he builds targeted currencies that are the core of the emerging post-industrial economy, the meta-currency project. He's the founder and developer. Mark Fisher, InspirePay and Inspire Commerce founder and CEO. He's based out of Boulder. He's been an internet marketing e-commerce consultant for more than a decade. And Ron is Stambaugh, right? Ron Stambaugh is a mobile payment visionary. He founded Micropayment, a retail technology company to revolutionize the use of mobile phone as an electronic wallet to execute payment transactions at the retail point of sale. A lot of expertise here. And as Tom was talking about this whole human value and financial value, I thought, geez, I have a lot more social value than financial value. How do I cash that in? How can I make that work in the new world? That's a serious question. I mean, I think you're kind of driving at that. My network, let's say I have my 5,000 Facebook friends and business contacts. I can convert that into something.
Sure. I'd actually like to flip the question on its head a little bit, which is to look at why it is that you would think that you should do that, and why it is that all business and our whole economy is basically based on doing that. We have a whole phenomenon of taking value from systems and extracting it into transferable monetary means. And there's a little bit of a problem with that. No, there's a bit of a problem with that we're beginning to suffer the consequences from, in the environment, in our health, and those kinds of things. And I think that part of the transition that we're in is actually increasing our capacities to understand value, to recognize value, to measure value, to create currencies that are not purely monetary, that are not purely extractive, but can actually recognize value where it is embedded in the system. So the examples I would give right off the top of my head are things like certified organic, or well, let me just back up and say, do you remember when food was just food, right? Not locally grown, free range, grass-fed, organic, yada, yada, right? All of those things are actually trying to make parts of the value of the food production process visible. I would assert they're a kind of currency, even though they're not a monetary currency. They're a kind of reputation currency for food. And so I want to kind of turn your question back on you again and say, why would you want to convert your relationships to money?
Because I have debt?
Well, but when there's value that should be recognized in the relationships, in the network, and not tried to be converted to something else.
So how do we train that?
You don't necessarily have to. Well, see, that's where the word currency gets you into trouble, is that when I'm using the word currency, it's about currents, it's about flows, but it's not necessarily about the item itself flowing. So you can have a reputation currency, like a college degree. You and I shouldn't be able to exchange college degrees, right? That would break the integrity of the reputation currency. And so that's part of what I'm saying about, I think we're going to be, what's emerging is new ways of recognizing, counting, symbolizing, value, not all of which are done in rational numbers. You mentioned in your presentation, Tom, that social currencies are kind of emerging, but we haven't really gotten good at it yet. And I think that we've actually created a lot of social currencies and not recognized that we have, like titles. President of the United States carries tons of social currency. It's formalized, it's recognized, but it's not transferable, as social currencies shouldn't be. Because if they're tied to the value of the person providing that social good, you can't just untie it, just like a college degree, right? You shouldn't be able to transfer college degrees. So I know it's not necessarily the kind
No, that's
of
okay.
question or answer you were expecting.
Well, would you say that with we're gaining more tools to be able to assess somebody's strength in the business world and the social world? Because you might look at two candidates for a job traditionally before any kind of electronic media, and this person here has the same set of skills, but yet we know that their extensions reach far beyond, and they'll be a more valuable person to the company because of the personal context that they have, whether it's the reputation for integrity, who they know in the community, friendships they have. We seem like we're kind of expanding that now. And I know on my Facebook page and my Twitter and all that, some of it's about what I do for work, Colorado Biz. We're promoting our own stories, but a lot of it's just, I might find that I have a guy who's a wealth management advisor, and we're both Warren Zevon fans. So we're trading stuff like that, and we may do business together in some way, but it goes beyond that, a much easier way now, I think, than before.
If I could say one more thing before passing on from this, that I think the thing you're pointing to is, I want to make a metaphor that in the same way that language has enabled us to create meaning and share meaning and create many different levels of meaning, and we have whole bodies of literature with all kinds of nuances of meaning, but it's not about hoarding meaning. It's not about accumulating as much meaning as I can get and somehow preventing you from having it. It actually is about, it exists when it's flowing in between us. I think that the capacities that humanity is actually moving into is that same thing, where currencies are about making value visible, sharing value, making all these different types of nuances of value available, visible, shareable, not about hoarding it and acquiring it only, which has been our pattern. So that's the kind of shift that I see.
Great.
coming.
Rob, would you like to add to that?
Sure. I'm going to come at this from more of a real-world practical experience point of view. Some of the work that we were doing at Bling Nation, most recently there, we're really starting to leverage how to share social value and currency. I don't know if you talked about NFC technology and so forth. We used some of that technology and linked it up with PayPal and Facebook, and really started to leverage how consumers could share social currency in terms of coupons and things like that with their social network. And there were some real interesting metrics starting to come out of those transactions. So, retailers are looking at you as a consumer as a way to leverage not only your own buying power, but also leverage your social network buying power. And they would actually incent you to share coupons and things like that with your social network to transact at a further date. So there are some strides being made in this space about how to convert your social currency into real value. And it's pretty interesting to see how that started to transition into increased transaction frequency and increased loyalty and things like that. So there is some work being done there, and it's pretty interesting to see how the consumer starts to react to that whole incentive concept.
Great, thank you. Mark?
I don't have a lot of experience. I don't know, maybe I have not enough social currency in this life yet. It's interesting, we just kind of deal with a company called Gigia, and they specialize in social sign-on. And so I've just been getting indoctrinated into their world. And
What's that mean?
Social sign-on is you can imagine logging into a website with your Facebook account, right? And yet there's dozens of companies, MySpace. A developer's not going to probably take the time to develop to every single location, right? So they're a single point where you go to, and then from there you can connect to all of the different networks as a developer. And so it's interesting looking at the way they've perceived it, because wherever you log in from, the different networks share a little bit about you depending on how much you ask for. And in that space, you know, we would be able to know if we asked for the information, what they call it an I rank. But this is how many times have they talked about your company? How many people do they know? And then I get to make the decision, should I have asked for that information? Do I want to market to them, right? So it is fascinating in a sense what's happening with the different social networks. But yeah, as a currency, my brain's still trying to get around that.
Great. Thank you, Mark. John, you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, there's lots of philosophical ways to approach this, and certainly, I like what Arthur's talking about here is that this is a whole different mindset in that we're getting away from hoarding things and we're getting away from sucking value out of things, but we still haven't figured out how to leverage these values for making a house payment or some of the more pragmatic things that we're dealing with on a daily basis. And maybe that requires an entire different shift in thinking, but I still haven't got my mind wrapped around that one either.
How quickly do you think we'll go to a cashless society? I was at a fundraiser at the Denver Stock Show Yards a couple nights ago, and I had to go to an ATM because they were only taking, it was a real cash bar. Aren't that many of them anymore?
Yeah, I think it'll be quite a while before we get away from cash, tangible cash currency, partly because half of the currency that's in existence is owned by people outside of the United States. They have, that's more valuable and more stable than their own currency, and so they've hoarded all of this currency, U.S. currency that's out there. And cash is still really our only form of anonymous money that's out there right now.
You brought up the idea of the phone, because that was a situation where all they would accept was cash, which we're tending to see less and less of that now.
Right. I mean, there's been ideas put forward to put chips in currency so that we can track all the currency and everything. I'm not sure if that'd be a good idea or a bad idea. I think we'd get a lot of pushback if we did that.
We're starting to drive at this question, but you always talk about how whenever you give a speech, there's always something about how it's going to change human behavior. What are some of the shifts you see? And as we have these different forms of creating value and exchanging currency and then redetermining what currency is, how's that going to change the way we live? You've talked about hoarding. I mean, people can buy an iPad now and maybe they're not going to have a bookshelf anymore, or just very few, because they just want to hold something that's kind of more of that everybody has access to. There are a lot of threads of this one.
I'm actually just thinking that my answer may be further out than my last one, so
go there. Go there.
Okay. Well, I want to. So changes to human behavior. First of all, I think I want to address the assumptions about human behavior that we currently operate in, because we are operating inside of a set of assumptions as if we're all competing, money grubbing, greedy, like there's a system that actually, a currency system that has us fighting for artificially scarce symbols, and then we attribute our behavior when we fight for those artificially scarce symbols as if that's natural human behavior. And I think that if we just pause for a moment, we can recognize that whole economy that occupies a large percentage of our attention, right? This whole hamster wheel of having to get enough money to get your rent paid this month and stay ahead and that kind of thing occupies most of our attention and our time and energy, creative output. But that whole economy is built on top of a social economy. And that whole social economy is built on top of a natural economy. And the rules of those economies are very different. And those economies have proven to be more staying than sort of the brief life cycle of the industrial age economy that we're experiencing right now. And that our behaviors in participating in those economies are different. So when we participate in the social economy, it's, the whole thing of kind of selling your social network to the highest bidder to get you to advertise to them. I mean, most people have been put off by that for quite a while, and it's, part of what has people be uncomfortable with network marketing and, pyramid scheme type marketing things where, you want to be able to support your friends, you want to be able to go out to lunch with your friend and not have it be a sales pitch for a product, right? For Amway or something like that. And it's whether we make that slightly more subtle, whether we make it so that it's hidden, so that you can't really tell that the person is selling you the thing and it's coming through this other channel, very quickly I think that's actually going to deplete the social capital of the social economy, because that's not the way the social economy works. That's not the way relationships at that level work. And and I don't think, by the way, that this is, I can understand if this seems idealistic and far out, but it's happening in very, very practical ways right now. You can't pay your mortgage with it. Banks don't accept it. No, you can't fill your car with this gasoline. The oil companies don't accept it. But when you look at networks like couchsurfing.com, for example, I don't know how many of you are familiar with couchsurfing. We have some people. Couch surfing, like the expression of when you crash on a friend's couch. So this is an internet site with almost 2 million members now that if you are traveling, and especially if you're traveling on a shoestring budget, you're like out of college or something like that, or in college, and you don't want to pay for an expensive hotel or even a youth hostel or something like that, you can look up people on Couchsurfing, and there's a whole bunch of reputational indicators, right? That whether your identity is confirmed, whether you've contributed to the Couchsurfing project, testimonials and friendships, and
Always has
that
donuts
kind of
available, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Couchsurfing.com making money. They got to pay bills, they got to pay for hosting, they got to pay real money.
Sure.
For all of the services.
Couchsurfing.com, their primary revenue source is identity validation. They'll validate your identity, confirm that you are who you say you are through doing a financial transaction with you, and sending a postcard to your house with a code that you have to type in. So they confirm that you have the billing address information, that you actually live at that address, and that's how they confirm your identity. That's their primary revenue source, that and contributions people contribute to it. So they're not making, there's no financial transaction when you stay between the people who stay at each other's houses. There's just a social transaction.
So that's where you want to be in the new economy, is the broker between the social value between two people.
They're not a broker in that. There's no surcharge that they're charging.
What's the fee that they charge?
They're enabling those things to occur, and people either validate their identity or not, or they contribute to the project or not, but they're not charging on a per stay basis or anything like that. It's not a classic broker relationship. And I'm not sure, and I think again that the point that I'm trying to make in talking about couchsurfing, and there's a bunch of things that are emerging like this, that are trust networks that truly are fueled by social currencies, where the assets, the thing of value, flows freely. It's not being exchanged, it's not being charged for, it's not being brokered, but it is being enabled by social currencies that make it safe to invite this person into your house and be confident that they're not an axe murderer or whatever. So the kinds of changes of human behavior, I would assert, aren't really changes. They're more like moving back to the more natural modes of social interaction that have been overlaid by the competition for artificial scarcity.
So maybe 100 years ago, being a village, hey, so-and-so might have an extra room for you tonight. And this is just taking that and making it larger.
Sure, or today, when you have a friend in town. It's not about 100 years ago. That's how we interact in our social circles.
But you
we
didn't
don't
have
charge
that.
our friend when when your college buddy comes into town. You don't say, yeah, you can crash at my place for $50. Got cash in your pocket? That's not how you interact with your friends. And so it's the ability to take that same level of wealth creation and wealth sharing into the formal economy, into formalized ways, because the currencies formalize the trust indicators in terms of social currencies.
So you're not, it's not a capitalistic kind of thing, it's more of just a community, social,
It's about access to wealth, and it's a mistake to think that money is what creates wealth. Money is just a symbol. You can't eat it, you can't sleep on it. It's just a symbol that we use to help facilitate the movement of it. Like Wikipedia, for example, what's the revenue model in Wikipedia compared to Encyclopedia Britannica? But they're creating so much more wealth in the domain of information. The thing is that when we have this, I'm about to bust a sacred cow here, I think. It may create arguments.
we already we rode a dead horse, we can bust a sacred cow.
All right, excellent. Dead cow. We have this mythology that markets are the efficient way to move resources, that money and markets are the efficient way, yet think about how you run your household. What are you charging your kids for their meals, and at what interest rate, and how long do they have to repay it? And are you prorating the use of the refrigerator to divide up the electrical costs? And if you think about the things that we do in the commercial economy to actually make it be able to put contractual things in place to divide up the costs and all that kind of stuff, terribly inefficient. Try running your household that way. Gift economies are thousands of times more efficient. And as we put the kinds of things that enable gift economies to scale in place, the problem is gift economies don't scale. They take face-to-face relationship in the past. As we create social currencies, they allow gift economies to scale to 2 million members on Couchsurfing, for example. And that is a much more efficient flow of resources than when you have to negotiate every interaction through a financial transaction. And so it's going to be the phenomenon of as these resource flows are just so much more efficient that they will replace many of the ones that we currently pretend are efficient.
Great, thank you. Rod, would you like to add to that? Mark?
I think your original question was, originally you were asking about
Just
the
social
entire
change.
subject of money and and micropayments and its effect on consumer behavior.
Yeah, the way people will interact, and because you never, something is invented and the use for which it was invented, like YouTube, for example, it was originally just a video sharing service for people who were amateur video people. It became something much different, much broader, much more universal.
Right, okay, because I got very excited about this question. And I think, before I was saying I don't have a lot of social value, I do. At least I think I do. But I don't know, I tweet something and nobody responds, right? So in that sense, I was dogging myself, and I want to apologize for that. In terms of commerce, the one thing I've noticed in the merchant services world is that it's very easy for somebody to pull out a credit card and pay at a business. But for me to give you $5 online is not easy unless we use PayPal or we have this long conversation around, hey, do you take Zong? It's just a long dialogue, right, to even have that conversation. And I feel like as we start to continue to develop technologies that bridge, that make the process of sending, requesting, engaging in commerce easier, then it should be as easy as just bumping a phone, right? And maybe even have the technology know, oh, you have Zong, you have Dwolla, I have Dwolla, okay, we can engage this way, right? And I feel like the easier that it is for that to take place, the more cottage industries, the more small businesses are just going to thrive in the economy. It used to be when it was cash, I would walk around and I could only give people cash that I knew, right? Go online, I'm going to mail cash, probably not. But again, the more straightforward that it is just to bump somebody $5 in a secure way that I feel comfortable with, business is going to just explode. And so that's what we see a lot. In our business, we have every single day people calling, asking for merchant accounts. And we say, well, how much are you going to transact? Oh, probably $200, $300 a month, right? If that. And that's really difficult, right? But yeah, I think as these new technologies evolve, we're going to see a dramatic change in how people go out and seek business and exchange online. I think it's going to be fascinating in the next 5 years.
Typically for like an entrepreneur who doesn't want to set up a Visa account to know that they're able to, or make the charges that you have to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, right now, if you wanted to go out and request money, I mean, the kind of de facto option is PayPal, and you go to PayPal's page, and somebody knows, oh, they're paying PayPal. Like the social level of confidence in that transaction is decent because you trust PayPal. But at the same time, you don't necessarily know who you're doing business with. And I think the more that people can express themselves, can get out there, can set up a page, and engage in commerce, and then with successful transactions, have some kind of record of that. I think, yeah, we're going to see a lot of change in the next 5 years.
Do you see some of that change being not just a transaction of dollars or however form they take, but more bartering and exchanging services, exchanging goods?
Well, great question. So I don't know, 5 years ago, my father started buying scrap stamp books and selling them on eBay. He now has some 6,500 green thumbs ups, from successful transactions. And one guy that kind of dogged him, and then he negotiated out of it. So he's just all green. Everybody now in the stamp world wants to go talk to my dad because he's got this social confidence that if he sells a stamp, it's going to be legit. And so, yeah, again, you can't trade that. I'll give you my 6,000 credits. And if there's just two bad transactions, he falls off that pedestal. But it's for sure there's something happening in each transaction beyond just money moving now.
Yeah, I have a great eBay rating because my son, who's now 22, and he was like 15 or 16, started selling all kinds of stuff on eBay under my name because he was too young. So now I can. My reputation is what he built for me. Good kid, huh? He's going to be an accountant. Rod, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment. I would argue that consumer behavior is a very difficult thing to change. I mean, again, I'm coming at it from a practical point of view, and we've seen some using new technology, NFC technology, and as easy as bumping your phone at the POS terminal, and there was huge incentives given to the consumers to use that on a repetitive basis, and yeah, they would try it for a while, and maybe over 30 to 60 days, they'd get bored with it and go right back to pulling their card out of their wallet because it was convenient, it was easy, it was a habit, and to getting a consumer to change their behavior is a very difficult thing to do. There's, I think, some things that are akin to the social currency. One of the things that we observed is we did some market research and asked, what would keep you using this new technology to pay with your phone and bumping it at POS and things like that. One of the things that came about was if there was a social cause that I could contribute to every time I paid this way, that would keep me more engaged. But people were just lazy. I mean, some of the banks we worked with, for example, would give you as a consumer 5% back in cash every time you paid by simply bumping your phone at the POS. And we had people that says, yeah, I just never got around to signing up for it or taking that 30 seconds to enable that technology to do that. Even though 75% of the retailers in that community could accept it, they were just lazy. They would just as soon pull their card out or pay cash.
How much of that is demographics, though? With younger generation be more apt to use that?
I was shocked. So one of the things we observed was the consumers that used it more frequently were our age. Probably late 30s to early 60s were more comfortable using it and used it more frequently than kind of the high-tech adopters, which was surprising to me.
And that seems to go against what you hear about some other changes. For example, my son used to love to look at the film section, the movie section in the New York Times, and for me, that's like big, huge, double truck color ads for movies. I love to hold that in my hand. By the time I would hand it to him, he'd already read it all online, and he grew up without holding that piece of paper.
Right.
So that kind of surprises me.
Yeah.
Well, yesterday we were flying back from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we had purchased confirmed seats on Frontier Airlines. And so when we got to the airport, because I always get an aisle seat because I don't fit well in there. So we got to the airport and they said, well, sorry, that doesn't really matter because all we have left is middle seats. Or you can take this one seat way in the corner in the back, the very back row. So we argued with them quite a few times, both at the original ticket counter and then at the gate, and they just blew us off. So this is something that became part of my Twitter rant in the afternoon. So they were losing social currency, and I made the comment that trust is a terrible thing to lose. So then I got a guy that started following me on Twitter, happened to be a vice president of Frontier Airlines last night, and he asked me to direct message him all the information, and so I haven't heard back from him yet, but we'll see how they handle this. But part of what's enabling all of this is the fluidity of our communication systems right now, and the fact that if we want to change human behavior, make them mad. They'll change. So if you're angry, then you're more likely to change than if it's a carrot dangling out there. But this ability to actually act right at the moment that you're thinking about it, that's what's changing everything right now.
So maybe it'll be, rather than if you break it, you bought it. If you thought you were going to buy it, you already bought it.
I wouldn't go that far, but
Someday, Tom, you never know. One thing you didn't mention when you talked about micropayments, and tell me where this fits in, is all these that we see a lot with charities or voting American Idol, and text such and such, and they'll grab 99 cents from you. Where do you see that going in the whole micropayment realm?
That's a real
Seems to be stickier than some of the other things we've been talking about.
That's a real good question, because I wrote a paper a while back on this idea of global elections, and there's two examples of global elections. One's American Idol, and one's a similar operation going on over in Europe. It's voting on musicians over in Europe. I forget the exact name of that. That's been going on for quite a few years. Millions and millions of people are involved in each of these. So I was speculating on this idea that sometime in the future that people would vote on something, and whether it's an issue or voting a person, but if you can envision 500 million people voting from 50 different countries, and if that was somehow empowered by some micropayments, I mean, if it was something that was important enough to them, and you get that many people that show up and vote for it, that could sway a lot of thinking. And then if you have 500 million people elect somebody for something, is that person then more important than the President of the United States, or is this issue override things that are being decided on in Congress? It's a good question. I don't know.
Anyone else want to add to that? What brought it up to me is I was at an American Red Cross fundraiser, and as part of the fundraiser, they said, hey, if you could text, I don't know how much money, it was a very small amount of money, like $10 or $20, and in that moment, a whole bunch of people in the room were giving them money, and it was kind of it was a shared experience where everybody was donating at the same time.
So yeah, I'm going to pipe in on this one. I think it goes back to that consumer behavior question earlier. I think they're closely related. I think that if there's a feel-good component to the transaction, micropayment transaction, I think that's one of the big drivers that will get consumers engaged on a continued basis. If they can feel good about that transaction, if they know that maybe a portion of that transaction has gone to a social cause, I think those are the kind of things that are going to enable and change consumer behavior to continue to use these new forms of payment and using this new technology to do micropayments, things like that. So I think that's a big factor in changing consumer behavior on a longer term basis, because what we found is consumers will try anything for a while. They'll try it because it's cool, but they'll get bored with it and they'll go right back to their traditional way. But if there's a social cause or social component to it, it has a greater chance to succeed, I believe. And I think those are starting to see some of those attributes attached to some of these new payment methods.
And you were talking about that with the failure of the just have your phone go
Yeah,
by. And some of the
exactly.
customers were saying if there was a social cause,
Yep.
it would have made it
Yep,
5% going to somebody else, Amnesty International or something like that.
just cause of their choice, yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Mark?